Lauren Seeley is deeply knowledgeable in the realms of death, dying, and grief, a death and grief doula for both humans and animals. Lauren is also a death care educator, Reiki practitioner, and a guide for those seeking creative and compassionate ways to navigate loss. On February 5th, she will be partnering with the International Doula Life Movement to present an LGBTQ plus and trans end of life and death literacy workshop. Lauren, thank you so much for joining us on the Dying to Know More podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. I'm thrilled to have you. So in preparing for our conversation, I was floored by how extensive your experience is. Like, you're everywhere on the web and your kind of resume is super extensive. How long have you been doing work in this space, and what initially led you to it?
So I've been doing work in this space for going on 4 years now. Originally, I started as a death doula. That was my interest. Actually, if you want to get technical about it, I was an enrolled mortuary science student 11 years ago, but dropped out because, well, the industry didn't really like that I had so many tattoos. So anyway, moving forward, I've been in the industry for about 4-ish years. I'd say less than 4 years, but my goal has always been to help people in any of the work that I've done in my life as an adult.
Yeah.
And I'm always drawn to helping, resource sharing, community outreach. And so naturally, what started as me wanting to, sit with people at the end of life just kind of became me finding more and more tools to add to my tool belt to help other people.
Okay. Of all the work that you do in this space, what do you find to be most fulfilling, or what fills your cup the most?
It's hard to say because there's so many different aspects.
Yeah.
But the most fulfilling part of the work that I do is knowing that anything that I pick up along the way can help somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And being a griever myself and being someone who's gone through profound losses myself,
Mm-hmm.
I would have loved to have had these resources shared with me the way that I'm able to share them with others. So to me, that's such a valuable part of the work that I'm doing, is just learning from so many amazing people in this field that are doing so many wonderful things, and then sharing those conversations and that knowledge with other people that could really use the resources.
There does seem to be like and maybe it's just by virtue of I've been more in this space over the last year, but there does seem to be like a rising up of the conversation, having the tough talks, pulling back the curtain, sharing of resources. Do you think are you getting that vibe as well, or is it just I'm new to the space?
Oh, absolutely. And, for me, I think a lot of it is because I live in New York City. I mean, this is a very theatrical city, and so
Mm-hmm.
many of us are creatives to begin with, even being in the death space. And we have the opportunity to add more of our background to the work that we're doing in a way that our environment responds really well to. And I think that as far as my immediate community is concerned, um, there's so many musicians that are doing death work, and there are artists, actors, and people are putting together these really cool productions and ideas, and playwrights and things like that. And so learning from my immediate community and being able to share everything that I'm learning and collaborating with the rest of the world has been very beneficial, because you think about places where people may not have these creative resources, and wow, people really respond to making art and
Mm-hmm.
being around fellow grievers, or writing poetry around fellow grievers, or attending a play that is about grievers. And so as far as like the bigger picture of what everybody else is doing globally, there's so many other countries that have been doing this sort of work for a long time, because talking about grief and death is not taboo where they are.
Right.
And to have that already be normalized and to be able to share it with our culture here in America has been so great, because we're learning that we just know what we know because we were conditioned to look at things that way. And so
Exactly.
having having access, thank you to the internet, to all these other amazing people doing work around the world, is really inspiring people to create their own space and ways of helping others.
That's awesome. Well, as I mentioned, you're partnering with the International Doula Life Movement, which is, for those who don't know, a doula training and support organization, for a webinar focused specifically on end-of-life care and death literacy as they pertain to the LGBTQ plus community. I will say one of my kids is a member of that community, so I have a vested interest, but I think we all should have a vested interest regardless. But let's talk about that. So let's start with death literacy. Explain for listeners just generally what death literacy is in case they don't know.
Okay. Well, I will also say that I have a child that is part of that community, and I myself am also part of that community. So this workshop is not only about queer folks and trans folks, but it's also talking about sex workers. And that's an important end of life, avenue to consider, because much like queer folks and trans folks, sex workers are often cut off from their families as well. Not always, and it's not always true for queer folks or trans folks either, but just looking at that as, maybe they have chosen family and making these decisions early and having someone advocate for them will help their end of life experience and death experience be something that is authentic to who they were. Death literacy in general is just having the ability to make informed decisions, advocacy, understanding what your rights are, what your options are, and being able to, have the correct information that you need. And my role as far as sharing it is just to get other people to consider what their options are, to be able to have those conversations, to be able to prepare for end of life and for death. And any way that I can get that to be, spotlighted or interesting is kind of my goal, because I think that a lot of people look at conversations around death and go, I don't want to do that because, hey, that's what we're used to doing. And so being able to find, I guess, more creative ways of sharing, or ways that, speak to each person personally. Everything that I do is about personalization, and being able to cater to a direct audience, who may not feel aligned with another, death literacy course. Because maybe that looks totally different to them, especially for cis folks who maybe have that extra support and umbrella of care. And, people in marginalized communities don't always have that sort of support, and they don't always get that respect and, advocacy that they need at end of life and in death.
So in terms of healthcare, legal care, or legal options, funeral systems, the end of life space, where do those entities most often fail queer and trans people or sex workers at the end of life? Where's that breakdown happening? In what ways?
One of the things that that I really dislike having to acknowledge about those communities is that they are, disproportionately likely to, they're likely to have a shorter lifespan, just because of who they are, because of where they work, and because of the folks being targeted, just given everything. If you think about where we are in the world right now, and in general, it's always kind of been that way. So considering it earlier on, kind of sets in place that, maybe they're not as concerned about what happens to them at end of life, or if they die. If they die, maybe they don't have a diagnosis and they don't have to go through the end of life stuff, but something happens and they die. They may not care what happens to them, but their community will. Their friends will. And, if they're trans and they don't have a good relationship with their family, they die, they may be, misgendered in death care, and they may not be memorialized as the person they lived their life as authentically. And that can be really harmful for the people left behind grieving them, because they know that they don't want that for them. They wouldn't want that for themselves, but yet there's nothing saying that it should be any other way.
Mm-hmm.
And also, as communities that are likely to have a shorter lifespan, they may not be thinking about getting those things set in place before they die. And then, the people that know them and that have lived their life with them can be pushed out of the picture, can be pushed out of the funeral. And so, it's really important for them to have, those conversations and have that legal paperwork, saying that there's somebody that they are, wanting to represent them should anything happen. If they die, who will be, representing who they were when they were alive, and not what gender they were born as or what their family saw them as or wanted them to be, because it's about who they were. As far as end of life is concerned, you really start to think about, are they going to be treated with respect? Are they going to be, called by the right name, and not dead named? Are they going to be represented for who they are and not the gender they were born as? And, are they going to be treated, correctly in care centers? And so I think that it's really important that when you're working with clients and in end of life, who are queer or trans, or who are sex workers, that you want to think about how they're going to be treated with respect, and not treated differently because of their life decisions. And a lot of the prep work that I do as a death doula in this community, for folks in more marginalized communities, such as those, is that I make sure that I find, doctors, hospice, legal representation that is actually going to care about who they are and
so that was going to be one of my questions. Are there so for instance, women-owned businesses, you see the websites that have like the logo, like I'm an official women-owned business. Is there sort of a benchmark or a stamp of approval for businesses and physicians and hospices and all of that are that will care for these people in the appropriate ways? Like, is there that sort of stamp of approval yet?
Everything that I do is word of mouth.
Okay.
It's big in this community,
Yeah.
I have this really big death doula group on Facebook. And it is an amazing resource because any of us at any time, if we need someone specifically, you can put in the group, looking for a queer friendly, trans friendly person in this state. Can someone
Excellent.
please let me know?
Okay.
And, they're going to tell you who they've worked with.
Okay.
They're going to recommend who they know is someone to be safe. I don't necessarily trust going on a website of a doctor that lives in another state that I've never met before,
right,
and saying, yeah, this person is safe, because
right,
you only die once.
right.
And I don't want to send somebody who may not be a good fit for them. So a lot of this is word of mouth. You ask people who live locally or who may know someone locally, and you find someone who has actually worked with them to recommend them.
So going back to like misgendering and dead naming, is there anything that people can do to ensure that their identity is respected after they've passed, or is that just simply going to happen when you're working with these businesses that you are, like you're talking about, that you recommend and are safe spaces?
I think that if there's no, so whoever is the legal responsible person to take care of them after they die is going to make those decisions, period.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's something to consider, because this is why I say planning early is a good idea. Just have something in writing. You don't have to do the whole thing. Have something in writing saying this person is, in charge of me and my care after I die.
Okay.
Sign your name, sign their name, notarized, to make sure that you have something legal in writing to, just in case, and because there is no guarantee. funeral homes and funeral directors are only able to do what they're legally able to do.
Yeah.
And I mean, as somebody who's worked in a funeral home, I've seen it. And I've seen families want absolutely nothing to do with the chosen family, and families not wanting to respect who they were, whether trans or queer. And
That's what I find so heartbreaking. Like it's just,
yeah,
and that's what I want people to listeners to know or learn from you how to hopefully avoid that, because that just sounds devastating to me.
yeah. And I mean, it's less likely to happen in New York, but what if you live in a small state and, the funeral home absolutely does not care? And I mean, this happens in big cities too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not putting down any small towns. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that legally you can only do what you can legally do. So
Yeah.
it's really important to have that in writing just in case something happens, because think about, if not yourself, think about your community, think about your chosen family. If something happens to you and you die, they're going to be heartbroken. And
Hmm.
being somebody who has worked in the sex industry myself, I've watched this happen many, many times to my colleagues.
Hmm.
They die. The family absolutely hates what they did for a living, and they don't want anything to do with the people that they considered their family. They're shoved out of the picture. And I
Yeah.
know that's not what they would have wanted, but
Right.
unfortunately, they didn't plan their death.
Right.
And so none of that was prepared, and maybe they died young and they didn't have anything in writing because they thought, oh, I have so much time, I don't have to worry about that right now. It's
Yeah.
just not that way. It's not that way really for anyone. We never know when we're going to die. It's
Right.
always good to plan early, but especially in these cases where you know that there's a chance that your family will take over and push everyone you love out of the picture. And how heartbreaking is that?
So do you think would you say that's the single most important thing that people in these communities can do is get that in writing and get it notarized? Is that kind of the takeaway?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I hope that everybody would get to live to an age where end of life is more of the focus. But we don't know that. I mean, we don't know that that's going to happen. And so it's just important. And as doulas, it's also important to be sensitive to those things and to think about it from outside of, our perspective, of what would this look like for a person who is married, who has children, who is cisgendered, who has a good relationship with their family.
Hmm.
And I mean, there's even people, that are cis that don't have relationships with their family,
Hmm.
and they have chosen family too. And
Right.
so it's also important for them to consider, what is care going to look like when I die? What is my funeral going to look like, as far as like who's going to be in charge, who's going to distribute my fabulous shoe collection, and
Yeah.
so it's really just, I always say it's not necessarily for us. It's not to say that you're going to die early, but what if you did? What would you want the people you love to have to take away from that loss?
Hmm. So in kind of in that vein, if someone is listening who is a member of the LGBTQ plus or sex working community and avoiding these end of life planning discussions because it feels scary or unsafe, what do you want them to know?
I just want you to know that, we're all going to die at some point. It's a bookend. We're born, we die. What
Yeah.
happens in between those two bookends is so important, and is going to matter when we die, especially to the people who love us and see us for who we really are. So, as scary as it may be to have those conversations, have them in community with other people who also think they're scary. And you never know, you may actually find it's kind of fun to be around other people who are freaked out about talking about death. And, it's a good feeling, knowing that you have done something to prepare selflessly, as far as, your community is concerned, and your friends and the people you love. It's not for us, it's for them.
Yeah. Well, I can't thank you enough, Lauren, for sharing your insights and expertise. Listeners, as I said, I will share links to the places you can find Lauren, as well as to sign up for the LGBTQIA and trans and sex workers end of life and death literacy workshop that Lauren and the International Doula Life Movement are hosting. It's February 5th, 7 p.m. Eastern. It's virtual and will be recorded. I will provide the link so you can get your access pass. Lauren, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It has been a pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much once again for having me, and thank you for having such an important discussion with me as well.
I appreciate your time. If you like this episode of Dying to Know More, be sure to give it a like and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode.